The engines roared steadily, but inside the cabin, a storm of tension had already begun. Passengers clutched armrests and whispered hurried prayers, while flight attendants moved briskly along the aisles, their faces taut with concern. Yet Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness himself, felt nothing in that chaos except the fragile chest beneath his trembling hands. "Don't you give up on me, Finn," he whispered, his tattooed hands pressing firmly against the boy's small frame. The 10-year-old's eyes were closed, his body limp across the first-class seat, and Ozzy's heart thudded violently in his chest. Around them, the plane lurched violently to the right, oxygen masks swinging like pendulums, luggage tumbling from overhead bins. Panic erupted like fire, but for Ozzy, the world had shrunk to this one small, pale child. Tears streaked down Ozzy's weathered face as he continued compressions, whispering words of encouragement he never thought he'd have to use in such a desperate way. "Not now, son. Not after what your grandfather told me." The flight was 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, slicing through the thickest turbulence in decades. A man who had once bitten the head off a bat, who had survived decades of excess and chaos, was now fighting to save the life of a boy who carried a secret that could change everything he thought he knew about family. It had started earlier that morning before the storm hit the Atlantic. Ozzy had settled into seat 2A on the British Airways flight from New York to Birmingham. At 61, he was weary from years of medical appointments in America. Parkinson's had begun to show its grip, slowing movements that once seemed unstoppable, and these trips to specialists had become a routine he neither enjoyed nor avoided. They were necessary. "Excuse me, sir," a small voice called across the aisle. Ozzy glanced up, adjusting his dark sunglasses, and met the gaze of a boy with bright green eyes and tousled black hair. There was something familiar about him, something that tugged at memories Ozzy hadn't realized were buried so deep. The child clutched a worn Black Sabbath t-shirt, his fingers brushing the faded print reverently. "My dad, he died when I was little," the boy said quietly. "Grandpa says he loved your music more than anything." Ozzy's stomach nodded. Over the years, he had heard countless stories of fans whose lives had been saved, or at least softened, by his music. But this was different. This was real and terrifying, and impossibly close. The boy's grandfather, a weathered man named Patrick Brennan, nodded solemnly. "He's never known who his real family is," Patrick said quietly. "Not all of it." Ozzy's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, Patrick?" Patrick swallowed, glancing at the boy who was now fiddling nervously with his headphones. "Your father, Jack Osbourne, he had a relationship in Dublin before you were born. She raised Michael, your half-brother, alone. Never told anyone who the father was, except me." Ozzy's mind raced. A lifetime of secrets, decades of music and madness. And now, a boy across the aisle whose very heartbeat might be tied to him. "Wait, are you saying—" Patrick nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. "Finn, he's your nephew." The turbulence hit again, violently, as though the plane itself were reacting to the revelation. But Ozzy barely noticed. He was staring at Finn, really looking at him, and for the first time he could see the faint resemblance. The stubborn jaw, the shape of the eyes, the same fierce glint that had once been his own. "That's a lot," Ozzy said quietly, his voice breaking. "Why now?" Patrick's voice trembled. "Because Finn's heart, it's failing. The doctors in Dublin said he has a chance in Birmingham, but he needs help, family, blood, everything." Before Ozzy could react further, the boy slumped, his small body going completely limp. His lips turned a ghostly blue, and panic surged through the cabin. "Flight attendant!" Ozzy shouted, pushing himself up. But the plane lurched again, throwing the crew off balance. The next seconds felt infinite. Years of stage performances, of facing screaming crowds, of surviving the impossible, all came down to this. A 10-year-old boy who had just discovered he had an uncle in the rock legend sitting beside him, and whose life depended on him acting fast. Ozzy didn't hesitate. his hands the same ones that had clutched microphones in front of millions, pressed firmly against Finn's chest. Compressions, CPR. Every movement precise, every second a battle against time. Patrick sat trembling beside them, recounting the story of Michael, the boy's father. He had lived a hard life, raised alone, instilling love and resilience in Finn that now made Ozzy's efforts just a fraction easier. "He's stubborn as you were at that age," Patrick said through tears. "He loves music, he loves life, and he loves people. Pure heart, just like you." The storm outside roared, the plane bucking violently, yet inside time seemed suspended. For Ozzy, the lights, the screaming passengers, the chaos, all of it faded away. There was only Finn, and the knowledge that life could change in a single heartbeat. "Stay with me, nephew," Ozzy murmured, adjusting Finn's tiny frame to aid his breathing. "Uncle Ozzy's got you now." Minutes stretched into eternity. Sweat poured from Ozzy's brow, his Parkinson's shaking, threatening to throw off every movement, but he pushed through. Every compression, every breath he encouraged, carried not just life, but hope, legacy, and redemption. Finally, the plane steadied slightly. Emergency crews were ready on the ground in Shannon, Ireland, alerted by the captain's call. Finn's chest rose and fell more regularly. His eyes fluttered open, focusing weakly on Ozzy's familiar, intense gaze. "Uncle, Ozzy?" the boy whispered. Ozzy felt tears sting his eyes again. "That's right, son. I'm here. I've got you." The rest of the flight was a blur of emergency protocol, whispered encouragement, and the quiet reassurance of presence. Finn was transferred to Birmingham Children's Hospital as soon as possible, with Ozzy and Patrick close behind. The little boy's condition stabilized, but it was only the beginning of a journey that would reshape all of their lives. In that moment, Ozzy realized something profound. Decades of darkness, rebellion, and chaos had led him to this precise point. Not a stage, not a screaming crowd, not an arena filled with lights and pyrotechnics, but a plane 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, where a boy's life and a family's secret collided. He was a rock star, yes, but he was also a man capable of unconditional love. And for the first time in years, he understood that some performances, the ones that mattered most, happened off stage in moments of raw humanity. Patrick's hand rested lightly on Ozzy's shoulder. "He's got your blood," he said quietly, "and now, he's got you." Ozzy nodded, gripping Finn's hand gently. "Then we fight," he said, "no matter what it takes." As the plane descended toward Ireland, the sun dipping into a golden horizon, a sense of purpose settled over Ozzy that no tour, no album, no roaring crowd had ever given him. This was family. This was legacy. This was love in its purest, fiercest form. And in the back of his mind, he knew the journey was only beginning. The sterile hum of the hospital corridors greeted Ozzy Osbourne as he pushed the double doors open to the pediatric wing of Birmingham Children's Hospital. The smell of antiseptic mingled with the faint sweetness of flowers that some thoughtful visitor had left behind. Ozzy's boots echoed softly against the linoleum floors, but he barely noticed. His mind for once was singularly focused. Finn. Finn Brennan lay in a crisp hospital bed, small and fragile beneath the bright hospital lights. His chest was bandaged from the minor procedures that had been necessary to stabilize him, but his eyes flickered with the faintest glimmers of recognition when he saw Ozzy enter. "Uncle Ozzy." The voice was weak, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of trust, hope, and relief. Ozzy dropped into the chair beside the bed, removing his dark sunglasses, revealing eyes red from lack of sleep and nights spent worrying. "Hey, champion," he said softly, brushing back the boy's black hair. "You're doing amazing." Finn attempted a small smile, his grip on Ozzy's tattooed hand tightening ever so slightly. I didn't think I'd make it," he admitted, the words hesitant but truthful. "You're stronger than you know," Ozzy said firmly, leaning closer. "Strong enough to survive anything, even turbulence at 30,000 feet. he added with a faint grin. Patrick Brennan, Finn's grandfather, appeared at the doorway, his face etched with worry, but also gratitude. Sharon Osbourne, who had flown in immediately after hearing the news, followed close behind. The hospital staff had been in awe of Ozzy's dedication, his refusal to leave Finn's side, even as the boy stabilized. "The doctors said the transplant is next week," Patrick said quietly, his voice tight with tension. "They found a donor, a perfect match." Ozzy nodded, swallowing hard. "Then we do what needs to be done." Finn's got a second chance at life, and we're not wasting it. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits, medical briefings, and endless waiting. Ozzy stayed by Finn's side constantly, reading to him, playing gentle riffs on a small guitar he had brought, and telling stories of his life, careful to omit the chaos, instead focusing on lessons, love, and resilience. "Did Dad ever play music with you?" Finn asked one evening, eyes wide as Ozzy strummed a soft melody. Ozzy's throat tightened. "Your dad, Michael, loved music. He was shy, but he had rhythm, just like you. And now, you're carrying on that love." Finn's fingers traced the guitar strings clumsily, but the notes were earnest. "I want to play like you," he whispered. "You already do," Ozzy said, smiling, pride shining through exhaustion. "Music isn't just about hitting the right notes. It's about heart. And you've got heart in spades," Finn finally, the day of the transplant arrived. The hospital staff moved with calm efficiency, preparing Finn for surgery. Ozzy lingered in the waiting room, the harsh fluorescent lights reflecting off the floor, hands clasped together. He replayed every moment of the previous weeks in his mind, the turbulence, the fear, the panic, the desperate chest compressions on a boy he had only just discovered was his nephew. Patrick sat beside him, silent but steadfast. Sharon Osbourne joined them, her hand finding Ozzy's in quiet support. "He's in the best hands," she said softly, the steel of her usual confidence tempered by worry. "And so are you. Don't forget, he needs you after this." Hours stretched, each tick of the clock a lifetime. Ozzy paced, sometimes muttering to himself, other times sitting with his head in his hands, praying in the way only he could. Half rock star, half desperate uncle, fully human. When the surgeon finally emerged, exhaustion etched into his face, Ozzy held his breath. "He's stable," the doctor said. "The surgery went perfectly. We have a new heartbeat." Ozzy's knees buckled, and he sank into a chair, tears streaming freely. "Thank you," he whispered, voice breaking. "Thank you for giving him life." Patrick clapped a hand on his shoulder, and Sharon reached over to squeeze his hand. "You did this too," she said. "He's alive because of all of us, and because of you." Over the next weeks, Finn's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. His strength returned steadily, each day a triumph over the fragility that had threatened to take him away. Ozzy remained by his side, teaching him guitar, telling stories of Black Sabbath tours, and letting him glimpse the life of a man who had survived everything, yet had found his most profound purpose in the life of a child. One evening, as Finn sat on the hospital bed strumming a small melody, Ozzy watched silently. The boy's green eyes sparkled with life, determination, and joy. "Uncle Ozzy, I think I'm ready to play for real," Finn said, voice full of excitement. "You're ready," Ozzy agreed, his hand resting on Finn's shoulder. "And when you do, play like you mean it. Play like it's the only thing that matters in the world." Finally, the day came when Finn could leave the hospital. The doctors cleared him, proud of the boy's resilience and progress. Ozzy drove them all back to the Osbourne estate in Birmingham, Finn peering out the car window, absorbing everything: grass, streets, the hum of the city, all with a newfound appreciation for life. Sharon welcomed Finn into the house with warmth, while Patrick looked on with tears in his eyes. Ozzy led the boy to his own room, small guitars already lined up against the wall, music sheets stacked neatly on a stand. "Your new life starts here," Ozzy said, helping Finn place his hands on the strings. "And it starts with music, heart, and family. Always family." Over the next months, the bond between Ozzy and Finn grew beyond what words could capture. Finn called him Uncle Ozzy with pride, and Ozzy reveled in the chance to be more than a rock legend. He was a protector, a mentor, a family man in the truest sense. Sharon, Amy Kelly, and Jack Osbourne all welcomed Finn with open arms. The household was chaotic, filled with music, laughter, and occasional arguments over chords or song lyrics, but Finn had finally found where he belonged, a family that would never let him go. One evening, sitting on the terrace overlooking the estate gardens, Finn turned to Ozzy. "Uncle, did you know I was your nephew before the flight?" Ozzy chuckled softly, adjusting his sunglasses against the setting sun. "Not a clue, but I do now, and now I know how precious you are." More than anything, Finn smiled, resting his small hand on Ozzy's weathered one. I think I found my family, Uncle Ozzy, and I'll never let it go." "You never will," Ozzy replied, "and neither will I." Months later, Finn performed at a small charity concert organized by Ozzy. The boy's fingers moved confidently over the guitar strings, eyes bright with pride. Ozzy watched from the wings, emotion churning in his chest. The boy had faced death and survived, had learned the power of music, and had discovered the warmth of a family he never thought he'd have. After the performance, Finn ran into Ozzy's arms. "Uncle, thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Ozzy held him close, rocking the boy slightly. "No, Finn, thank you for teaching me that, even after decades of chaos, darkness, and rebellion, love is the greatest thing we can ever create. You saved me too, you know." From that day forward, the Osbourne family grew stronger, closer, more intertwined than ever. Finn continued to thrive, excelling in school and music, and embracing every day with the courage of someone who had faced mortality and won. Ozzy, once a figure of shadows and stage theatrics, found a new purpose. Beyond fame, beyond music, beyond the scars of a lifetime, he had found redemption in the heartbeat of a boy named Finn Brennan. And as the sun set over Birmingham, Ozzy played softly on an acoustic guitar, Finn strumming alongside him. The music carried across the estate, a reminder that even in the darkest lives, there could be light, family, and love that transcended everything. This was not the story of a rock star, nor of turbulence or heartbreak. It was the story of connection, of legacy, of a family that had found each other against all odds. And in the quiet harmony of the final chords, Ozzy understood something he had never realized before. Sometimes the greatest performance of your life isn't on a stage with screaming fans. It's in the small, quiet moments of love, courage, and hope. Because saving a life, Finn's life, had saved him too, and together they had found home.